Emma.
Yes, Madeline.
What do 9 out of 10 dentists agree is the best combination of dental hygiene and a joke?
I don't know. What do they agree on?
Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I thought I'd be better at talking while gargling host Madelyn. There was no dress rehearsal for this joke, host Madelyn.
I was not the one to do the spit take, host Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. This week we are talking about Prototype and, in case you couldn't understand me, mouthwashing.
Yes, we are.
The joke seemed like a really good idea when I came up with it. So yeah, I mean, 2 games, very different games.
Sort of.
Both about mouthwash. Just kidding.
Both about, kind of bad people.
Bad companies. Bad situations.
Bad companies. Yeah,
bad
that
people.
Too. Yeah.
So look forward to that. So we gotta start with the old game, as we do on this show.
Yeah.
And it's Prototype.
Prototype.
AKA bracket. Prototype! Close bracket.
Yes, all in caps.
Stylized. That's how I express caps lock, that voice. So, bracket, Prototype, close bracket.
Yep.
It's a 2009 open-world action-adventure game from Radical Entertainment, published by Activision for the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, and Windows. You can play it now. I didn't. But you can get it on the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and its sequel. I did love, in researching this, a recent Reddit post that was like, are we cooked? I want another Prototype game. Are we cooked?
Was that the question?
Yeah. How cooked are we?
I like, how, that term has evolved from, he's cooking, in a good, good, to are we cooked? And that's bad,
I'd like a middle ground version.
It's it's weird because it's while you're cooking, right? That's good. But as soon as you have food, it's nope. That's not, we wanted the journey.
We gotta figure out something with the pre-cooking process. That's the next evolution of the slang. Anyway, folks, you probably are cooked. I mean, there hasn't been a new one of these since 2012.
I'm pretty sure Radical Entertainment does not exist anymore.
It's definitely disappeared into Activision in one way or another.
Yeah. After Prototype 2, I think it was absorbed into Activision as a support studio that did some work on Destiny and stuff, I think. I think it was Destiny. Destiny was Activision published. Maybe? Yes?
Sure.
Maybe not.
Did some work on something, Activision.
Yeah, did some work on some sort
Prototype.
Of live service game, and I think declared bankruptcy eventually.
Woohoo. So. Anyway, in Prototype, you play as shapeshifter with amnesia, classic trope, Alex Mercer.
Yep.
And you're running around New York City, trying to stop a viral outbreak, a disease called blacklight, which turns you into a monster.
Yes.
It's kind of bad.
Is he trying to stop it, or is he just trying to, get back at the people who did this to me?
Kind of both, right? I think you're right that it's well, at first he doesn't know anything about what happened.
Right, yes, because he has amnesia.
Yes, it's classic amnesia thing.
Yeah.
You do sort of rapidly, turn into a little bit more of a revenge-y type quest. But because the revenge-y type quest takes place against the pharmaceutical company or whatever, genetic engineering company, it's maybe also an attempt to stop the monster pandemic. Debatable. Ends justify the means, etc.
Anyway, you've got the monster pandemic powers.
Yeah, but crazy though.
Yeah.
Most people just kind of bad.
Yeah.
You very good.
Yeah.
So if COVID made your mucus good.
Partly they're kind of venomy.
Yeah.
Without the extra consciousness in your brain also.
Probably.
But you have sort of this black sort of ooze stuff that comes out of you, and you can use it to be very strong and jump high and fall from great distances and stuff. But you can also gobble people up. I feel I think I watched a video or read something where they kept saying you gobble them. Well, they get gobbled.
Which is really thematically appropriate for this week.
Yeah.
Gobble gobble, Venom's here. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think that's a line from Venom
Gobble,
3.
gobble, gargle, gargle, which Emma has already titled this week's podcast.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. Anyway, you can gobble people up and assume their form, essentially. So, in missions, for example, if you gobble up a nice government agent walking around on his own, you can then sort of walk into the area as a government agent, and so long as you did this from far enough away, they will not suspect you of being a monster, right?
I wish you had once said the word gobble to me before we started recording this episode, because that would have been a way better opening joke than me spitting water all over you.
That's okay.
But that's okay. We'll move past it. Yeah, you can eat people and gives you your
Yeah.
skills. And I saw at least a couple of reviews that were like, I mean, also you're like superhuman strong, you can like run up walls and turn your arms into guns, basically, and stuff. So like you're basically a monster.
Yes.
In the like complimentary. And not complimentary.
And both, yeah.
Like in both senses. But I did see at least a couple reviews that were like, the world does not seem to notice this very much.
Interesting.
There's some like stealthy stuff, but just the idea that like you're running around like eating people and like that's like, and there's like a scary pandemic happening and people do seem to just sort of be like living their lives.
Well, prescient.
I mean, apparently. But I really feel like if COVID had turned people into like superhuman monsters.
I watched some gameplay and it did seem like when you grab a person, people run away screaming from you. So
sure, okay, fair enough.
I don't know.
Maybe I could be
maybe
wrong.
they fixed it with mods.
Yeah.
Maybe there was
Who
bugs
knows?
when it came out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, you know, the story in this, there is a story in this, although it's difficult to talk about Prototype without talking about Infamous, which came out like a month before it, I think.
Yeah,
a month after
think
it.
so,
One of them a month before the other. And is also about kind of an anti-hero, superhero dude running around kind of fighting the government and shady forces.
Yeah, they're not really that similar. Is my impression.
Beg to differ because I pulled a little chart from CNET, I think, the little Infamous versus Prototype chart.
Sure, you can, lots of trivial details that may be similar, but
Here we go.
Okay.
Let me run through it, and the listeners can decide.
Okay.
We've talked about Infamous on the podcast before, so you can go back and listen to that episode and make your judgment. Both an NYC-inspired open city environment. Both a mysterious terrorist attack causes the military to seal off the city. General chaos in the streets, breakdown of public order. Protagonist searching for answers about his superpowers.
I feel like you could like sub in Spiderman for this too, though.
Not yet.
Okay.
Does Spiderman fight the military?
I don't know. The other comparison was like the Spider-Man 1 and 2 games were coming out at this time too.
Does Spider-Man make dubious ethical choices?
He does in Spider-Man Web of Shadows.
Okay, fair enough. Is the Spider-Man city, I like this one. City is fully populated with people you can't talk to and cars you can't drive.
Sure.
Anyway,
why would you want to drive a car? Also, he can't get into a tank in Prototype,
sorry,
at least.
Infamous. I've already forgotten what game we're talking about.
Yeah.
Prototype.
So does that count as a car you can drive?
Yeah, maybe. Sure.
Okay.
Anyway, I thought it was funny. You're right, that it is basically just like much more like if Spider-Man could gun arm himself.
But the vibes of, what I mean is the vibes of Prototype and Infamous are quite different. And
yes.
I think because they had these trivial things in common and we were very into like storytelling at this time.
This is pre-narrative, don't forget.
I guess it was pre-narrative. But and Infamous is much more like you're making moral choices. You don't make moral choices in Prototype.
Not even once.
There's a... I mean, maybe you're making moral choices.
I'm just kidding.
There's not a storyline
system.
split. There's not a morality system. A lot of the like stuff I read, like retrospectives and stuff, we're just talking about. It's very pure power fantasy.
Yeah, it's definitely a different era of gaming power fantasy here for sure.
It's very concerned with like what is fun, right?
Yeah.
What kind of chaotic destruction can you cause? What sort of awesome powers can you unlock and use to rain havoc down upon your foes, right? And so it's meant to make you feel like you're sort of having fun in a sandbox, I think, more than something like Infamous.
Yeah, sandbox power fantasies, here's a Madelyn proclamation, kind of out, right?
I think GTA 5 ate them all.
Yeah,
Gobbled
that seems
them.
gobbled
Even. Yeah.
them. That seems fair. That's a fair assessment.
We'll see you in GTA 6. I'm very curious when GTA 6 comes out if GTA 5 will continue to outsell it every year.
Probably. Feels likely.
It's got a woman in it, so.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Woke. Speaking of women, a lot of women sort of in the story of this. Kind of. It doesn't end well for all of them. But yeah, in this story, which by the way, from everything I described or that I read about it, it sort of seemed like, oh, this was kind of like, you'll read the synopsis. If you read the synopsis like me, you're like, this feels like it has a lot of story. And I think the experience of actually playing the game is much more vignette-y than this.
Yeah.
But yeah, you wake up in a morgue. You got superpowers. You freaked out. Somebody shoots you in the chest, but you're fine, and you escape the morgue.
Right.
Then you're like, what am I gonna do? Find your sister. Reasonable.
Sure.
Decent plan of attack. You work with her to break into the Gentek headquarters. Gentek being the company whose morgue you woke up in. Bad sign.
Very Spider-Man name.
Gentek? Yeah, that's fair. But Spider-Man probably exists in this universe.
Probably.
You manage to do that. Eventually you, like, team up with your ex-girlfriend, but, like, joke's on you. Don't ever do that. It's a trap. So, like, you, like, get into a situation where you almost kill the commander of, it's not called Blacklight. I can't remember what the Blacklight is the, virus. Black something else. The Gen Ops, the, like, bad people company. You almost kill their commander, Robert Cross, until he says the words to you, Penn Station, which send you into a daze, which, like, fair.
Yeah, thinking about Penn Station.
Sometimes you do it, like, especially, like, pre-Moynihan train hall, just, like, thinking about being in Penn Station. You're, like, watching for them to be like, which track is it on? And they won't tell you until it's, like, 30 seconds before you have to be on the train. Fair. Like, a daze. Absolutely. Then, like, stuff gets weird here. It's like, you've got a parasite. You gotta get that out. The parasite turns into, like, a super monster. Then you kill your ex-girlfriend, which I feel like, I read that, I was like, I don't know about that.
Well,
She's bad, but I don't know if we get away with killing the ex-girlfriend in a game made much later than 2009.
for what it's worth, he is pretty and unambiguously the villain by the end of the game.
Yes. Still, feel like we have a little bit less tolerance for that kind of violence against women in games now, which is probably a good thing.
I think we should be allowed to murder.
Absolutely, should be allowed to murder women too. I'm just saying, I read it, and my reaction was, oh.
Yeah.
Like,
that's fair.
Oh, we
That's
killed
fair.
her.
That's fair.
Not like she ended up dying. Like, we murder her.
He's a bad guy.
I know
okay?
he's a bad guy. Anyway, eventually we find out, like, spoilers for this game, right? But, like, I don't know. You're in it for the power fantasy here. But here's more spoilers. So it turns out, surprise, surprise, it's a government pathogen that the Wikipedia summary made it sound like they were going to use to, like, perpetuate race-based violence, but that doesn't seem like that could be right. Go read it, listener. You tell me, because it seemed a little bit, something in there was weird. So, basically, you used to work there, and they decided to, like, shut down this whole, they were like, this is bad what we're doing, we shouldn't keep doing this, we're gonna shut this down, and also we're gonna kill everyone who was involved with it.
Right,
probably,
because that's good.
Well, it's an understandable decision.
Sure, okay.
Right, I get it. So you're like, I'm gonna take a sample of the virus, like a little insurance policy, right, so they can't kill me. But unfortunately, they still want to kill you, so eventually you ended up holed up in Penn Station, as everyone eventually does, and you get shot, and, like, throw down the virus, and start this big outbreak by doing that. But also, it heals you.
Right.
That's just kind of convenient. Anyway, then Manhattan's gonna get nuked, but you manage to get the nuke offshore, and you're invincible, so you get nuked, but, like, your body, you manage to eat a crow, is what it said, so, like, you regenerate.
Cool.
You're reasonable. And then, yeah, everyone's like, oh, that was crazy that happened, but everything's gonna be fine now.
Yeah, sure.
And in the sequel, you're the villain.
He's the villain.
It's kind of a Last of Us Part 2 situation, actually.
You play as a different protagonist.
Yeah.
You don't play as him at all.
That's right, but you're former Marine Sergeant James Heller, who's seeking revenge on Alex for starting the outbreak that killed his family.
Yeah.
So it kind of, you know.
Yeah. I see the influence.
If there was a little girl, it'd be pretty blatant.
Yeah, I read a interview about Prototype 2 in Wired with Dave Fraccia of Red Eye Radical Entertainment, and they were saying when making the sequel, they were thinking like, we don't really want to depower Mercer in the way that you kind of have to when making a sequel, right? Because that feels sort of antithetical to like
what
him.
It is. It doesn't make any sense. Why would he have lost any powers? The whole point is that he has endless powers.
Yes. So they didn't want to figure that out, and also thought it would be really cool to fight him, which fair.
That's true.
Yeah, that's just true.
I do wish more games would do that.
Yeah.
It's dope whenever it happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, fight the former protagonist.
Yeah.
I can hear TV tropes being like, I've got a page
I
for
know,
you.
yeah.
But, like, let's do more. Let's add more to the page. Anyway, Prototype was a critical and, like, or commercial sort of success, certainly, the first one, and, like, critical, reasonable success. Didn't get, like, glowing reviews, but got, like, this is fun reviews.
Yeah.
And then the second one I feel like didn't do quite as well.
Probably.
That's why we're cooked.
That's why we're cooked. Yeah, fun fact. We talked about Spider-Man a lot, but the actual precursor to Prototype was the Incredible Hulk games that they made.
That's so
at Radical
weird.
Entertainment. Where a lot of you can see a lot of Hulk's moveset from those games has been sort of transferred to Mercer in Prototype.
That'd be cool.
With just, like, the addition of being able to sort of disguise yourself or approach things more subtly or use tools. There was a YouTube interview from 2020, actually, with Eric Holmes, who also worked on Prototype on Game Brain YouTube channel, where he just talked about how, like, they worked on Hulk and then worked on Prototype, essentially. Which was super interesting to hear about that process.
It'd be a fun little Easter egg if you could transform into the Hulk in this.
I think that would have probably gotten it delisted at some point, so maybe it's best they didn't do that.
Like, a fun little Easter egg, though. Like, you can't deny that it'd be a fun little Easter egg.
Sure. Yeah.
Not to go back to Infamous, but I do have one more fun little Infamous tidbit about this game.
Okay.
So, look, for better or for worse, a lot of comparison reviews of these two games when they came out.
Yes.
Like, whether or not you go back and really feel like they were similar enough to what the games press was in 2009 that fair number of reviews of that, including a video review from The Escapist, like R.I.P., right?
I don't know. Is The Escapist
Isn't
gone?
The Escapist, like, didn't The Escapist get gutted?
I believe it.
Or they, like, fired a bunch of people? Escapist layoffs. Right, yeah, like 0 punctuation left, like mass layoffs. I think it's like a zombie site now. Anyway, the point being,
I believe it.
and it, like, feels very much like a zombie site when you go there, because the actual images that are at play in the story that I'm about to tell are no longer hosted on the page.
Yeah.
So you can kind of find them elsewhere on the internet, I think, but they're no longer hosted on the page. But the Escapist reviewer did a video comparison of these two games, where basically he was like, ultimately, I can't pick the winner, right? I'm not sure which one's better. And here's my proposed tiebreaker. This is very 2009, so Get ready.
I'm ready.
He's like, I would propose a tiebreaker where there's a competition where each studio creates a piece of artwork of the other studio's lead character in women's lingerie.
I was waiting for that. I was like, that's normal. That sounds normal.
And the better image would win. And he was like, much to my surprise, both studios were like, we're doing it.
Well...
And they did.
Great.
And I should have written down who won, but it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. Why would you pit two kings against each other like that, you know?
Just for the benefit of the world. Two kings fight, we all come out winners.
I guess so. That's how it works.
So yeah, that really did feel like a... Like, imagine that happening now. Imagine if, like, somebody reviewed Animal Crossing and Doom. And they were like, I liked both of these games, but I think that they should draw each other's characters in, like, lingerie. That's not a good example, but that was the first, like, two games coming out at the same time example that I could come up with.
I don't even know how you do that with the Doom guy.
You know, not all of us can be artists, Emma.
That's true. You're right.
In fact, I am sure that if you search Doom Guy Lingerie,
I'm sure I would find
there's
it. You're
plenty
right.
of it.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah, you're going over the story. I think it's mission-based structure.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the story is much more like, here's a little episode. But anyway, every time you complete a mission, it tells you exactly how many dollars of the military's money you've wasted.
That's so sick.
Which, like, heck yeah.
More of that.
Number go up, baby.
That was what was great about, like, the Burnout Crash games, too. It'd be like, how many dollars of cars did I wreck? More games should quantify chaos and monetary
Yakuza 0,
value.
like, tells you, like, how many limos worth of money you spent or whatever,
oh,
right?
you're right. It kind of does, yeah. But that's not quite the same. That's all kind of... That turns into funny money. I want real money.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this probably turns into funny money eventually,
You're
too.
probably
But,
right.
yeah.
This game isn't highly realistic?
What
What are you talking about?
It's realistic that if a crazy Venom guy was running through New York tearing up the military stuff, no, it probably would cost that much. So
Yeah.
it's just that the money that goes in the military is funny money to me, so...
Ain't that the truth? Well, are we ready for some dental hygiene?
I'm ready.
Great. So, it's important that in addition to brushing your teeth and flossing regularly, that you use mouthwash. This might be controversial to say, with fluoride. No, just kidding. Mouthwashing. It came out this September. One of our more recent
I don't
new
think the
games.
mouthwash in mouthwashing probably has fluoride in it.
Yeah. Oh, can you drink? I don't want to get into that. Of course you can drink fluoride. It's in our water.
I know, I just don't think it's very good mouthwash.
You're right.
It's kind of the point.
You're right. Anyways, it came out in September 2024. It's a psychological horror kind of walking sim game. Developed by Wrong Organ.
Yep.
And published by Critical Reflex. And it's about a spaceship crew who crash and then have to keep living until they don't.
Our crash, more like our crash.
I know. We were gonna get into more.
It's the opening scene of the game, for what it's worth.
I wasn't avoiding for spoilers. I was just moving through it quickly. So I could throw it over to you.
They are crashed. I have played mouthwashing.
Oh wow.
Yes. So I
Like a very
won't
you game.
I won't have to talk about it next week. Why?
I don't know. I don't think of psychological horror. I guess you're into Resident Evil now, though. So what do I know?
It's not very much like Resident Evil.
I know.
I feel like I should say.
Sorry, not to give a false impression of this game. We probably should decide now. Like mouthwashing is eventually going to get hard to talk about without talking about spoilers.
Yes.
So we should try to talk about everything non-spoilery now, and then we'll give us big okay, now we're going to talk about games. Do you feel like, having played the game, that the reasoning for the title is a big enough of a spoiler to paywall here?
No.
Okay,
It's pretty early. I've already said there's mouthwash in the game.
Okay,
so
too late.
It's too late.
Okay, fair enough.
But first, very Madelyn fun facts about this game.
Okay.
So
I'm scared.
When they announced Mouthwashing, Wrong Organ, they did so by doing a free update to their previous game.
You're right, this is a very Madelyn fun fact.
How
okay,
a Fish
go on.
is Made.
Uh-huh.
And they put in a Katamari Damacy inspired update into their previous game in order to tease mouthwashing, like horror tinged Katamari Damacy.
That's so sick. That's so relevant to last week's nature episode. Horror tinged Katamari. I just feel like we deserve that. Man, oh man.
I have not checked out How a Fish is Made, and I have not checked out the Katamari level, but I did see that on the Wikipedia page and be like, that can't be right, and then looked into it further and was like, oh, okay.
No, How a Fish is Made was there first, so they're like a group of people who met in school, in like game design school in Sweden.
Yeah.
And then we're like, we want to make
like
games.
A special game
program. Of some kind. Yeah.
What's a vocational program almost,
yeah.
It felt like,
yeah.
From how I heard it described.
Yeah. So then they made that game, and then they decided to call themselves Wrong Organ, and so then now there's Mouthwashing.
Yep.
Which, terrible SEO. I mean, great SEO as soon as you put game on it.
Yeah.
What other game involves... Can you think of any other games that involve Mouthwash?
I think
even a little,
makes it a little better.
Sure.
It's not just called Mouthwash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's mouthwashing, which
You're right.
does help
It's a
with
memorable
recognition.
title for
Yeah.
sure. Just not great for Google.
Google brings it up when I look for it,
Yeah,
but maybe it's reading my Steam history.
Will
or
it be
whatever.
good as like it only just came out though, like in a year?
We'll see.
Is it
we'll see.
is Colgate gonna take over?
Yeah, Colgate. Colgate released its parody game.
Actually, I did see in Reddit somebody like there is an Apple Store ripoff. This is only out on Windows. But yeah, look at these lovely little ripoffs of it.
Oh my god. I love mobile game ripoffs.
Shinsuke. That was our beloved nurse idea to celebrate our captain's birthday. I'm sure you love it.
Shinsuke.
Jim co-pilot.
Jim co-pilot is my favorite.
Unlike you, Supreme Captain, we got actual work to do to keep this cursed space going.
Also, I like that in the screenshot of Jim co-pilot, the person taking the screenshot is getting a phone call.
No, I think it's an ad.
Okay.
So dispose of it? Ha ha ha! My dead body! This is not funny to anyone but me, but Emma's getting some fun. Anyway, people really liked it.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, don't get it in the App Store. It's only on Windows.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a first-person game.
Mm-hmm.
It's non-linear structure. And you start at the time of the crash, which I will say, like, it opens with, like, the computer being like, please steer left.
Away from the planet.
Left, I think,
Yeah.
to avoid asteroid things. And I just wasn't paying attention, so I didn't even realize when I clicked on the thing that it says steer right.
Yeah.
It only says steer right, so
Yeah.
I did, but I was like, of course I'm steering left in
Nope.
this extremely normal game. But no, you are purposely steering the ship towards the asteroid with the intention of crashing it. And then from that point, you flash back and forth between following Jimmy, who was originally the co-pilot, and is now declared himself, the captain, in the after event of the crash, and before the crash, where you're playing as Curly, the actual captain, who in the crash his skin
Horribly mutilated.
His skin is melted off. He doesn't have a tongue or like hands or feet.
He's mostly an eye now.
He does have a torso.
Yeah, no, I know.
He's just his head. He's got his torso, but he's very bandaged. He has an eye. And one of the main sort of mechanics that you repeat is giving him his painkillers, where you have to... I have the achievement for opening and closing his mouth several times in a row. So...
Glad that's on Emma's screen. This is, to throw back to our horror games episode, this is a very PS1
yes.
horror-style game.
It is in the trend of the PS1. Still thriving.
Thriving.
The PS1 horror aesthetic thriving. I think we did an episode on Crow County.
We did.
There's stuff like a Hollow Body, Sorry We're Closed, lots of PS1 horror games coming out right now. So,
this one, would you say it's correct to describe this as more of like a lightly interactive movie? I realize that maybe oversells the visuals. It looks like a game, but like,
maybe there are some light puzzles.
I know, it seemed like everyone hated those though.
Well, one, you have to figure out some codes.
Uh-huh.
Essentially, you have to use the food maker thing. So you have to put the things together correctly. And then there's two segments that are like there's I feel like this may be a little spoil. There's one like stealth section and there's one like combat section that are a little bit more involved. And I did try to play this in a single night and got very stuck on the combat section until I put it down and went to sleep and tried it the next day, and I got through it the first try. So
this game is only about 2 to 3 hours long.
Yes, that's been my PSA. Go to bed.
Go to bed.
Right now. Go to sleep.
Overall, this game got really good reviews.
Yes.
People really like it. It was a huge surprise success for the studio. They talk in all their interviews, like, they have all these really great that they've done over the past couple of weeks, like Steam Q&A things that are really fun. So they talk in one of those about how, like, their publisher and, like, the whole team were basically like be ready for the reception to this to be, like, kind of meh, kind of lukewarm. And it's, like, sold really well and, like, gotten a lot of critical acclaim. People really like it. Like, a lot of the, like, this is the surprise best game of the year kind of energy in reviews.
It's interesting. I mean, you know, they're small and, you know, I can see, like, wanting to brace yourself for the worst, but it does feel like that sort of perfect horror game format for, like, you know, streamers, right? Because it's relatively short. You know, you can do it in a single stream, so lots of variety streamers would be picking it up. Yeah. And it's sort of horror, and it's got, like, twists in it, right?
It's not jump scary, though.
But even...
Like, no, I know. I'm just saying, like...
Yeah.
It's definitely a darker and psychological horror take than, like, horror.
Yes, there's a few, like, jump scares, quote-unquote, where you'll turn around and there's something behind you that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
But there isn't, like... Sometimes this is, like, unintentional. Sometimes this is like Daisuke is following you and you did not realize this until you turned around and he's there. Like, I scared myself.
Yeah. It does sound potentially like maybe more of the uncertainty. So this game was developed over the course of 15 months, which is, like, might as well be in a day. On current game timelines.
Sure.
Like, I recognize that it's, like, PlayStation 1 style graphics and it's only 3 hours long, but they were also like, we didn't even really work on it for the whole 15 months. Yeah. Straight through. And in that same question where they were like, brace yourselves, they were like, it really only came together in the last few weeks. So I do wonder if more of that was them being like, this game is so not finished that they, like, could not see what it was going to be.
Yeah, maybe.
They say, there are always points in a game's development where everything seems hopeless and it feels like the game will never be finished, but that moment was particularly strong here.
Yeah.
It very narrowly escaped cancellation before that. So I think it must have to do more with that than with, like, actual genuine expectations. Alongside that, they've given every crewmate's favorite Pokemon. So a real grab bag of, like, tone in these questions.
Yeah, there's some silly ones.
There are definitely some silly ones.
They also share a ton of fan art in those posts, which range from really horrifying to, like, what the hell am I looking at?
Yeah.
Which I do love also.
Yeah, they're people put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, interesting too, like, you know, they talk about how, like, it was always supposed to be non-linear, and, like, they, like, played around with, like, post-it notes, basically, and obviously, like, something that's really important in a story like this is thinking about, like, who knows what when, and that sort of thing, and really having to plot that out. And yes, it was always going to be Mouthwash. I mean, it wasn't always going to be Mouthwash, but it was originally going to be Mouthwash. So this is minor spoiler number 1.
Yeah, I thought that they talked a little bit about, like, what, in the question of, like, what would be the thing to put in. So you're on this spaceship because you're part of, like, the last manned shipping company in space right now. So you're flying a long haul cargo from one part of space to another, and you're not really supposed to look at the cargo, right?
Yeah.
There are all these posters on the wall, if you look, of, like, all the rules that you're supposed to do, like, don't nap for more than 5 hours at a time.
Right.
And stuff like that. You know, always find more work to do, or, you know, don't get injured or we'll take it out of your salary. With, like, this cute pony mascot. It's like the Pony Express or something.
Yeah.
Which in itself is, like,
funny.
Yeah. But, you know, in the aftermath of the crash, you're like, well, we're stuck here. Maybe we should look at what the cargo is, right? And it turns out it is just boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of mouthwash.
Ooh.
Yay!
Yeah. So the rest of the game is about everybody drinking a lot of mouthwash and what happens next.
Sure, yeah.
That's my spoiler-free.
That's a good summary, I guess, yeah. I think only 2 of the characters technically drink the mouthwash.
Sure. Okay.
Just to put it out there.
Fair enough. So some of the characters drinking a lot of mouthwash.
Yeah.
And yes, they did say in these same Steam Q&As, they were like, mouthwash was the first idea, but we briefly considered hand sanitizer, rubbing alcohol, or just straight up hard liquor. Mouthwash just has that vibe of being the worst and most absurd option.
Yeah.
Considered having a few variants of different flavors, but the uniformity of all the bottles being the exact same kind of adds the sad horror of it all.
Yeah, so the key part is that it has some sort of alcoholic content in it. But yeah, it's sort
Who
of...
knows? Probably
shouldn't
be drinking
drink it.
mouthwash soon.
Well.
Coming for us. Also, the soundtrack has been a big hit on Spotify.
Yeah, I saw... I didn't read this article, but the headline was something like, now I can buy a bag of chips or something.
The audio designer actually said, here's his tweet, it hit 1 million downloads, and he said, this is like last week, he said, 1 million streams, let's effing go. I can buy like 2 hot dogs with the revenue.
Yeah.
So, you know?
It is also,
bucks.
you can buy it through Steam if you want.
Sure.
More directly give them money, I guess. But...
or you can contribute to the hot dog fund.
Yeah.
Okay, are we entering spoiler zone?
Yes, let's talk briefly about spoilers.
Okay, this game is only 3 hours long. If you're gonna play this game, this is probably a good time to, like, jump ahead 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Great. Here we go.
So it quickly becomes, well, depending on who you are, it quickly becomes clear that Jimmy, the guy you're playing in the post-crash world,
new pilot.
Yes.
New captain.
Is not a very nice man. And has some delusions of grandeur. It's not, like, explicitly stated. I went back and forth on this as I played, if he had sexually assaulted the nurse on the ship or if they were just in an abusive relationship.
All of the reviews seem to have come down on the side of the former. But,
yeah. I went back and forth a few times. It wasn't totally... They don't state it clear out. It's not like they're mutually exclusive anyway.
Yeah.
But... and she had become pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to... She had told Curly, the old captain, and they had been confronting with Jimmy about it for a bit. But Jimmy makes the determination that if they go home, that will fully ruin his job prospects, his dreams of becoming a captain.
They're also all going to get laid off.
Yes. I guess they do find that out before. Yeah. This is also their last flight. So he decides that he will crash the ship.
And that's what's so clever. It's a first-person game.
Yeah.
So the whole time in this game, they've been being like, wow, Curly crashed the ship.
Yes.
Like, that's crazy. Why did he do that?
Yes.
And
you sort of assume it because he is the most injured.
Right.
So you assume he was in the cockpit, you know.
Yeah.
There's a fiery explosion there, whatever. But the real thing is that Jimmy had come out by the time Curly had run to stop him, and Curly went into the cockpit as it crashed, as he was trying to stop it from crashing. Not that, you know, Curly is like some innocent soul in this. He's very enabling and apologist to Jimmy, even as he also tries to be supportive to Anya. It's just, he's not very capable of showing support in a useful way. Which reframes a lot of the interactions with Curly, both from Jimmy giving him medicine and Anya being unwilling to give him medicine. It is a horrific process. They don't show you it, but they do have recorded sounds of trying to feed him the medicine. Which they said was one of their
favorite parts of the game to do.
And they're very gross. Because he doesn't have a tongue. Right? So they're just sort of like shoving those pills down his throat. And it sure sounds like it. Mm-hmm. So and it generally gets more sort of abstracted as Jimmy begins losing it, and more of the crew begins dying. And in the end, he puts Curly in the last cryogenic pod that they have, of which they had 4, even though they have 5 crewmates, because Daisuke was a last-minute addition.
Yeah, poor Daisuke is an intern.
Yes, he's an intern. Worst internship ever.
Yeah.
And that's where it ends. He's put the Curly away to be frozen for 20 years. And there's like a beat where like the credits start rolling and like you're in Curly's point of view and nothing's happening inside the cryogenic chamber after Jimmy has like shot himself. And for a minute you're like, Jimmy, did you not turn on the pod? Jimmy, did come on, it's the end. Did you not even turn? But he did. It's okay.
What would you even? I mean, like, the question, like, do you even want him to? Like, he's gonna wake up 20 years on this asteroid.
I know.
Still nothing.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's still just like for a second, it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Did you just lock him in this pod without even? Yeah, I think I enjoyed Mouthwashing. I thought it was very interesting.
I mean, it's certainly bleak in a way that games, I feel like, don't often allow themselves to be.
Yeah. I feel like the choice to center it only on Curly and Jimmy is intentional in terms of Anya's story, but I'm not sure I like it fully.
Sure.
Because she does not get much of a voice,
yeah,
I guess, of her own. She's only filtered through these 2 different perspectives on her. Which, like, again, I get, right, in terms of the horror aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's, like, my biggest critique. And also, there's, like, a shooting section where you have to shoot Swansea, one of the other crewmates, and it sucks.
It does sound like they were very concerned. They talked in several interviews about this. I can't remember if it was in the Q&A too, about like keeping it short and snappy.
Yeah.
They're like, we kept having to, like, even though it's a game where it's like ostensibly you're there to listen to people talk, like we still felt like we had to keep like shortening it and shortening it and shortening it to make sure that you were paying attention.
Yeah.
So that feels like definitely something that could contribute to that feeling.
Yeah, but in this FPS section, like, essentially, like, you're in this, like, graveyard area, and Swansea will, like, come from the direction that you aren't looking, right? And so then you have to turn the gun on him really fast and squeeze the trigger. Not tap it.
Right.
Like I would normally in a shooter that I don't even play those games very much. You have to hold it down or otherwise nothing happens. And so I was getting very frustrated until, you know, I slept on it and it went into my long-term muscle memory.
Right.
You know?
Right, of course. There's a lot of very, very dark humor in this game, too. I don't want to just sound like, oh, it's just like bleak.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it is just bleak, but like, you know.
It's bleak, but, you know, in a fun way.
Yeah.
In a quirky, fun way.
But no, I do feel like games that, I mean, like, even, right, like, Prototype, right? Prototype ends, like, this man is, like, a super villain, and, like, the city almost got nuked. And it's sort of like, oh, but, like, New York's gonna rebuild.
Right, yeah.
Kind of energy. This game is, like, there is no hope.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, not a story, it's a storytelling device that, like, books will do, right, or movies will do sometimes. But you don't see a lot of games that are willing in the way that Mouthwashing is to be like, this is probably not going to be a very pleasant experience for the player.
Yes, the opening text scroll before you load into the cockpit is like giving you a little background on like the ship, right, and where it is and how many days are left. And the last one is just, I hope this hurts.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is kind of the developer being like, hey, you.
Yeah, that's for you.
That's for you. I hope this hurts.
Well, on that note, is it MASH time?
It's MASH time.
It's really hard to combine. Like, on one hand, there's, like, very similar things, right? Like, monsters, both psychological and real.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the issue, sort of. Like, there's definitely very, like, eldritch horror abstract imagery in Mouthwashing, but it's not or at least I didn't read any of it as literal.
Sure. Yeah, no.
It's just like in Jimmy's head. Or in Curly's head. But with Prototype, that's the like explicit part of it, right? It's very like you've got this crazy creature inside you, right? And you become a literal monster. And because that's like similar but also like diametrically opposed.
Similarity. But in terms of like the actual gameplay of these two games and how that like it's really hard to take on one hand a game that is basically 100% concerned with being a gigantic power fantasy sandbox, and on the other hand a game that is basically 100% concerned with being a walking simulator that's like depicting hopelessness.
Yeah.
Like and that are ultimately then but both about like a monster of a man, more or less, or being exploited by a company exploitation turning you into a monster of a man.
Yeah, I think that is the problem, is that like Mouthwashing is kind of like Jimmy trying to live out his power fantasy.
Yeah.
And so
he just doesn't have any real power.
Trying to mash that with like the successful power fantasy is very like no, that doesn't work very well.
Yeah. Huh? I mean, okay. Let's see what I can do.
Okay.
So one thing about mouthwashing is the idea of like, okay, like we've been wrecked here and like we are going to die.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what the state of the cryopods is when there's one of them working.
Yes. Swansea's been guarding them, and Jimmy interprets that as he's gonna take the last cryopod when he discovers that
Okay, so there's only one.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 4 to start with.
Right.
3 of them are broken in the crash.
Got it. So anyway, so there is that like kind of like situation of, you know, we're in this is very classic like zombie trope mostly,
right? Yes.
Right? The like we are going to die. There's no way to escape dying here, and Mouthwash does it in a sort of bleaker way perhaps than turning into a zombie to some extent. Just that we're wrecked somewhere and no one will ever find us.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of like, oh, like the time is ticking down thing could be a scenario where we take the more kind of zombie element, like you've been the infected element of it, and then what do you do? I'm working through this, but like you know, a short narrative of you're infected in a closed space, and how do we turn on each other? That feels kind of boring, though. Something about it is not quite clicking for me.
I see, because there is, like, the illness element in Prototype as well, so I see where you're getting that. But yeah, I feel like something's missing. I guess you could have, like, I don't know what the setup surrounding it would be, but like you're in a survivor group, right? And one of you has been turned.
Okay.
But you're still trying to figure out like what you should do with them.
Ooh.
In the sort of way that they're keeping Curly alive even after the crash is sort of what I'm pulling that from.
Here, I've got something. Like maybe we could do it in even a vaguer way, right? Like we somehow have some kind of virus. I can't figure out the logistics of this, but like you know how you can like do like a group bear with me here.
Okay.
Like a group urine test kind of thing where it's like, oh, like someone here is sick.
Okay.
It shouldn't be a urine test.
Okay.
But like somehow we've gotten the information like we're all in this space. It's not like a contagious virus, but it is something that's going to turn someone into like a or it's actually, you know what I'm actually creating here? I'm creating that episode of Community where they take a personality test and they discover that one of them is a psychopath.
Yeah. Or it's just kind of like a game of werewolf also, too. Literally.
No, but nobody knows it's them. And,
okay.
like, this person is going to become a danger to society. And so it's a matter of, like, what do you do?
Okay.
Right, like, you're all in this enclosed space. You know that one of you is gonna get this virus that, or whatever it is. Like, I don't want it to be, like, an illness. I want it to be more of, like, a prototype style, like, you're gonna turn into a super killer.
Right.
But it's only one of you. So you can correctly determine who it is. and convince that person to kill themselves or everyone else to kill them in time, you can fix things.
Okay.
But you have to figure out who it is.
Okay.
And I don't know I don't know what the logistics of doing that are.
There's something there.
I feel like there's something there. It is just that episode of Community, but that's okay.
That's okay. You know, the Community was a good show, so parts of it
Also,
were.
there's paintball.
Also, yeah, you were in the middle of a paintball match. Somebody's stolen the pen.
Someone has stolen the pen. That'd be a great PS1 style horror game.
You could put the cast of Mouthwashing in Community, probably.
Absolutely. Probably already you could identify those characters.
You could, yeah.
Like, they already exist.
They do.
Well, I feel like I've done the best I can there.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really hard to take, like, let me take the theme from one into the gameplay of the other, because, like, the theme is
It's
already
so
there. And if you put it into the game, then it doesn't change.
Yeah. Well,
on that note, listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
it's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you enjoyed this week's show, you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Blue Sky. Oh, I'm so messed up by having to say something new. I don't actually think I usually say Facebook there. We're on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm so out of order. At Talk This Podcast. Unless it's different on Blue Sky. I have no idea. I think it's still Talk This Podcast.
It's talkthispodcast.bluesky.com, I think, right now.
Whatever.
I should probably change it to, like, just talkthispodcast.com, but I'm scared of that feature.
So find us. You can find us. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog, currently featuring Emma's thoughts on Arcane.
Yes, the ones for the second set of 3 episodes is out, and the one on the last set will be out sometime this week. It was fine!
A Thanksgiving miracle. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever it is that you find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This. Next week is...
6 weeks in gaming.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, I know it is, but, like, that's crazy. That's messed up. That's messed up that it's 6 weeks in gaming.
6 weeks in gaming, baby.
It was 6 weeks in gaming last week. Last week was 6 weeks in gaming. Okay, but what are we talking about in 2 weeks?
Yes, I pre-picked the games this time because I only have my
Cheater.
phone. I still did it randomly. I just did it before we started recording the podcast. Anyway, our old game is Knack.
Okay.
And our new game is UFO 50.
Woohoo! So look forward to that in December.
Heck yeah.
Soon we should figure out our end of year schedule.
You're right, we should.
But we'll get through Thanksgiving first, so stay tuned for the end of December programming notes. For once, the 6 weeks... No, that's not even true. The 6 weeks in gaming are still set up so that we will talk about the end of year games, and then, like, 2 weeks later we'll do 6 weeks in gaming. It is never...
I mean, it can only be
yeah,
up
I know,
to, like...
You're right. It's never... I understand how time works.
Okay.
Listeners, that's our show on that note. Emma, you want to gargle? You want to gargle our way out?
I'm not gonna gargle. This week, I hope that your oral hygiene is just exemplary.